gremlin on the road. Chicago! So much to see and do here. And I'll show you, I promise, later. For today, we shall track some stories. Some dark, some bright. This is 1735 West Diversey, which is flats now, but in 1897 this was Luetgert sausage factory. Adolph and Louisa Luetgert had a successful business rags to riches history of some 20 years and also a bit of a strained relationship at home. They had a saloon, they had a butcher's, and then Adolph sunk all the savings in the sausage factory. Louisa didn't like it. She wanted to diversify, but to begin with, Adolph seemed to have been right. Since the Columbian exhibition in 1893, hot dog sales boomed. Luetgert was making money hand over fist. Then came the crash, and by 1897 they were broke. She said, "I told you so. Didn't I tell you so? I told you so." The main problem was the wife was right, and he just couldn't take it. Adolph moved out to his office at the factory, while Louisa haunted the family home, which stood about here. Figuratively speaking, for now. She disappeared on the 1st of May 1897 and was next seen 2 weeks later in one of the factory's sausage vats in the form of small bone fragments and some golden rings, undoubtedly hers, that served as identification. Oh, Adolph. I mean, every child knows that alkaline hydrolysis does not work on gold. Adolph was very quickly sentenced for life. But he only served very little of it, having died in prison over his breakfast. I don't think it was sausage. Louisa didn't make it into the product, but still, that summer the good people of Chicago were wary of all minced meat. They say Louisa Luetgert came back to the factory as a wandering white light. Even some policemen saw it in 1901. But you know what, I think it's just people's vivid imagination.
But you never know, she could always go back.
There is this extremely well-researched book about it. Here is your link. Moving on, we're in North Winchester Street. In the 1920s, this tidy upscale neighborhood used to be Polish village. And this house, number 924, which belonged to one Marta Wesołek, was home to the woman who went down in Chicago history as Tillie Klimek, but she was then Tillie Kupczyk. Now, Tillie Klimek was Chicago's answer to Henry VIII. She poisoned at least 4 husbands and maybe some lovers and some other people. She admitted to about 20. But she went down for husband number 3, Frank Kupczyk, who died in this house. Tillie used arsenic, rat poison, in the food. She'd get married at regular intervals. Husbands would last between 12 to 24 months and each would leave a handsome life insurance payment. Tillie was a merry soul and she wasn't destitute thanks to all the life insurance she regularly collected. But she liked a bargain, and this was to be her downfall. One April day, just like now, she turned up on the doorstep with a coffin because the neighborhood funeral parlor had a sale. They were 30% off. Frank Kupczyk was still alive, just about. Marta Wesołek wasn't fond of the idea of a coffin in her basement and told Tillie to take that thing out of the house right now. Frank Kupczyk died a few weeks later and nobody said anything. Tillie might have got away with it, except that husband number 4, Mr. Klimek, having felt unwell for some weeks and months, went to see a doctor. Tillie was arrested and tried for murder at the Cook County Courthouse. This building here that still stands, although it is now offices. Adolph Luetgert was also tried here. On the strength of Marta Wesołek's testimony about the coffin for a man still alive, and her own confession, Tillie got life. She died in prison some 10 or 12 years later, still merry and completely unfazed by this whole business. Sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, you just have to let that burden go. Tillie has more than one book, so here's some links if you want more details. And then, as the evening falls and the lights come on, it's time for the last story. Chicago being the birthplace of electricity as we know it. It was here that Tesla and Westinghouse launched their alternating current system. They won the contract for the World Exposition in 1893 through severe underbidding, like any other contractor in public procurement ever. And they lit up a city for the first time ever at a price that people could afford. We didn't go to the exposition grounds because very little remains there. The electrical building would have stood about here. But there are other sites, such as Tesla and Westinghouse's first hydropower plant in Niagara Falls. Okay, not much of it still stands. But there is another power plant pretty much like it, just across the river, which you can admire in its full glory. Interested? Click on the thumbnail at the end. Right, lights, lights, and more lights. Hang on till next week for what to do in Chicago if you're not into old murders or power plants, and all the other practical stuff. And here's to travels. My first ever sip of wine from a can. It's not bad. It's Sauvignon Blanc. It's not bad. Would you like to try?
Early steps.
Mommy, did you bring the crayons? With cream.